The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to CADLink SolidWorks BOM Integration to NAV webinar. Today, we are very fortunate to have Jeffrey Lamb with us from QBuild. He will be conducting this presentation and or overview, however you want to put it. So let me go ahead and pass this on over to Jeffrey, and he can get started, and we can have some fun.
Thanks, Michael. I'm just going to share my screen here and
Perfect.
start my slideshow.
We can see it.
Excellent. All right, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Jeff, and like Michael introduced, I'm one of the account managers at QBuild Software. QBuild, we're based out of Toronto in Canada, and we've been developing and improving CADLink for a little over 10 years now. So that's what we're going to be talking about, the software CADLink, showing you how to integrate CAD systems like SolidWorks to Dynamics NAV. And we'll be seeing that firsthand later on as I do a demonstration of it within the presentation. So just a bit of a roadmap or agenda, a brief introduction about who we are, the challenges, what's the problem statement, what's the issue we're looking to solve here with CADLink. We'll be looking at a CADLink demonstration. We'll take a look at summarizing the solutions and then some next steps, how you can learn more or find out more about CADLink after this presentation. So like I mentioned, QBuild, we started in 2002, the simple link between just AutoCAD and, a simple ERP database. And since then, we've come a long way in integrating and partnering with a lot of major CAD, PLM, and PDM systems, pretty much all the major ones in North America. We've partnered and integrated too. So of course, we got the big mechanical CAD systems like SolidWorks and Inventor, Creo. We got electrical CAD systems like Altium, AutoCAD Electrical, and PADS. And then not just CAD systems themselves, we can integrate to PLM or PDM systems. So these kind of data management vaults that you may have to store your CAD files. So of course, SolidWorks PDM Pro or ePDM, Windchill, Teamcenter, and Autodesk. These are all systems that we integrate to. So throughout this presentation, I'll be talking a lot about CAD integration or BOM integration, but really when I'm saying CAD integration, it means just wherever your BOM data is stored, whether it's in your CAD model, in your PLM, or in your PDM system. That's what I'm referring to. And it really starts off, I'm going to start off the presentation talking about the CAD data is being the cornerstone of the ERP. You can't do ERP or manufacturing without the right part numbers, descriptions, quantities, all that stuff to make up your product, your assembly. And it's crucial you get that data into NAV quickly, efficiently, and accurately. Otherwise, you'll end up with excess lead times, mistakes on your bill of materials, and all of that leading to extra costs. So the whole point of this is we want to cut down on the cost of this data transfer. So typically, when we talk to people who are not using CADLink, they're currently doing this in one of two ways: entering the way that they're entering the bill of materials data from CAD, PLM, or PDM to NAV. So one of which, and probably the most common way, is what we call the brute force method, or really just a manual data entry. So it's a zero software cost. You're not using software in order to conduct this process. You have either, the engineer, when they're done modeling or making a change to a model, they're manually keying that data into NAV. Or even worse, they may hand off that bill of material to someone else, like a doc admin or a document assistant, and they'd be the ones keying in this data. So the issues are pretty clear with that. It's highly error-prone process for someone to be manually keying in part numbers and descriptions and quantities. It's highly time-consuming, of course, and really, it's really only okay for small engineering departments or if you have very simple bill of materials. But from our experience with our customers, Once you get to the point where you're at 3 or 4 engineers, and your BOM models are, more than 10 parts or a layer deep, if you have sub-assemblies, that's when you should really have software helping you manage that data transfer. Now, additionally, some people might be a step up from the manual, brute force or manual method. And we call this the two-step or the blind push. So someone within the company might, develop some script or some application to do some Excel import, export, or rather export-import into NAV. Now, admittedly, this is much faster than brute force. You're not having someone manually key in this data, but comes with a price of its own as well. Oftentimes, the data that you're using to import into NAV requires massaging. You got to make sure it's in the right formats and rearrange columns, and it still requires some work to do the actual push. There's no bidirectional connection, so it'll be a one-way push from your CAD model, your bill of materials source into NAV, and there's no data comparison or validation. We'll see later on with CADLink, it's not just it won't just help you create parts and BOMs, but it's going to load up a screen to highlight all the differences for you to understand and see what's different between the two. And from there, make smart decisions on what needs to be done, where data needs to go. So that's where we introduced CADLink, integrating your ERP between CAD, PLM, or PDM. We talked about having a bidirectional data exchange, so not just a one-way data push. Any changes you make on the CADLink interface will be pushed bidirectionally, updating both the CAD system and the ERP, ultimately synchronizing the bill of materials data between the two systems. That's really what we're trying to aim for here, having the same data in both environments so that there's no confusion between which is the source of truth when everyone's on the same page. With CADLink, you're conducting the bill of materials data transfer in seconds rather than hours, which makes a pretty compelling and easy, ROI, as we'll see later on in one of my later slides. And really, if you are manufacturing any complex assemblies or custom assemblies, if you are in the kind of manufacturer or engineer to order industry, this is pretty much what you're looking for. So I'm going to hop over into SolidWorks then and begin a CADLink demonstration. Definitely along the way, I would not be surprised if there were any questions. We will have some Q&A time at the end of the presentation. We've budgeted quite a bit, enough time for you to ask me any questions, and we can open up the lines for any dialogue for that. So definitely hold your questions till the end. With CADLink, it all starts from within the CAD system. So let's say I'm an engineer, and I just finished making some changes to this assembly I have here on the screen. So maybe there's some new parts I just drew, and I gave new part numbers to. So these are some new parts I just created in SolidWorks. Maybe I changed some descriptions on some of my existing components. The specifications on them may have changed. The dimensions, vendor, all that kind of information might have changed. I might have added or removed some components, so there's quantity changes there. So needless to say, as an engineer, I've done all this work inside of SolidWorks, but now I need NAV, the bill of materials in NAV, to have these changes as well, so that everyone else working from inside of NAV will be able to have my latest and greatest changes as well. So to kick off that process, typically I would launch from an add-in at the top here. In my demo environment, I just have a little external launcher here. But really, we would provide an add-in at the top here, being able to launch CADLink from inside of SolidWorks and launch off of the active configuration that we have here. So I'm just going to use my little launcher here, and what you're going to see is CADLink is now comparing the bill of materials found on this model to what's currently inside of NAV. So it's comparing fields like part number, description, quantity, unit of measure, all of that. And it's going to load up an interface for me here to see and analyze the differences between the two. So we're gonna just wait for this to pop up for a sec. And we will have it right here. Okay. So this is the main interface of CADLink. We call this the bill of materials grid. And on this grid, we see both the NAV and the SolidWorks comparison results on the screen with colored highlights telling me as the user what the differences are between the two systems. So each one of these colors is telling me something different, and I'm just going to go through an explanation for these now. With the white line items here, so we got the top level bill of materials, the white line item, has a bunch of children here, which, this first section here are mostly white line items. White line items just means that these are components that already exist in NAV. So maybe these are parts that we've used across multiple products now, and I'm just using them in this specific bill of materials. Either way, white line items just mean that this is the part that has already been created or is already existing in NAV. On the other hand, we have these green line items here. Green line items represent components that were new, parts that I just drew and I gave new part numbers to and don't exist in NAV yet. So green means it's a new part. So what's going to happen here was that when I click the Save button, CADLink will go ahead and create each one of these sub-assemblies or parts inside of NAV using data coming directly from, in this case, my SolidWorks model. So the part number, the description, the BOM quantity, unit measure, all that's being driven by my CAD data. So for each one of these green lines, CADLink will automatically create and fill out all the fields of data pertaining to it in order to create the part or the BOM. And that's really where a lot of the time saving is. You can imagine how long it would take someone to manually key in the data for all these green fields here. Might take you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, who knows? Whereas CADLink will be able to accomplish this in virtually seconds, right? So that's where a lot of the time saving takes place when it comes to using CADLink. The next color we see is this yellow field here. And yellow field represents field level discrepancies. So let's use that top level as an example here. Once again, because it's a white line item, it's a part that already exists in NAV. But when we right click on the description, we can see that there's a discrepancy between the two. So it looks like in SolidWorks right now, the description is saved with camera enclosure assembly with assembly spelled out in the shorthand, whereas in NAV it's currently saved as camera enclosure assembly with assembly spelled out fully. So it's with this yellow field and with this feature here that you'd be able to compare, be able to tell what are the differences between not just your descriptions, but any of the data mapped between SolidWorks and NAV. So you'll be able to catch all the typos, catch all the people using the wrong company standards for how we spell things like we have here. You can catch wrong specifications. This is where you'll be able to analyze and see any potential mistakes and errors in between the two bill of materials. To fix the mistake, from this menu, you can first pick which one you'd like to keep. So maybe in our company, in my company, we need to spell assembly like this. We need to save on some characters here. So I can click on the CAD description, and it'll update this field. And now when I click the Save button, this will push and update the NAV bill of materials, and update the NAV description for this part, rather, and update it to this shorthand word for the assembly. On the other hand, once again, going back to that bidirectional connection, I can click on the ERP description. If I want the NAV description here, when I save, this will push back to my SolidWorks model and update my SolidWorks model. If neither of these are correct, I can click on this field and enter a brand new description. Now this new description, when I save, will push bidirectionally. It'll update in both my SolidWorks properties, as well as update the description for this part inside of NAV. And in that way, it will be in sync. So once again, this is how you'll be able to reduce errors, and by reducing errors, that's how you will save on any unnecessary costs. You can imagine, errors in a specification or if you store lengths in a description, for example, or if you had a wrong quantity, very big difference in a bill of materials if you need 2 parts or 20 parts or 200 parts in a BOM. So by using CADLink, it'll help you compare, and you'll be able to see and catch these mistakes before it's inside of NAV. Very lastly, we just have the gray line items on the bottom. Gray means that this is a component that was removed from my CAD model since my last push. So maybe in a previous version of this, I did feature these 2 gray lines on my BOM. Since then, I've either removed them or replaced them with a different part. They're just no longer on my bill of materials. So when I load up CADLink, CADLink sees that these 2 parts will need to be removed from the NAV BOM as well, so that the BOMs will be back in sync. That is what the gray lines are. So to summarize the color coding here, no saving has taken place so far. All we've really done is just compared the bill of materials, and as a user, be able to digest and understand the differences between the 2. And this is a far cry, much better improvement over, let's say, having the SolidWorks drawing or the SolidWorks model up on one monitor and having, Dynamics NAV up on the other monitor, on the other screen, and then trying to eyeball the differences between the 2 bill of materials. Instead of that, we merged the 2 interfaces into one and just highlighted all the differences for you. So as a user, you can very quickly and easily understand what's different between the 2 BOMs. Next up, I want to cover some of the columns we see here on the grid. So we got a save checkboxes here. Just gives you full control over what's going to happen when you click that save button. So if you don't want CADLink to create some parts, you can remove these checkboxes. Or if I don't want CADLink to remove these components, I can just deselect that there. Of course, we have important item master information like part number, description, quantity, unit of measure. We've got some NAV-specific fields here like part class and product group. Of course, these are essential fields when you're creating a part or a BOM in NAV. And so you can either have CADLink default these to a value, maybe that you use very frequently, or you can access the tables from this drop-down menu and assign these yourself here. And then on the right-hand side, we have some fields for raw material data. So with, if you're in the industry where you are manufacturing a lot of your own parts, you're storing a lot of raw material, you got those raw material part numbers in your CAD system, you can have CADLink pick up on those and also include them in your BOM like I have here. So for some of these 3 here are my manufactured parts. I've already listed 3 raw materials that are consumed to make up these parts. If I need to assign them, I just need to click on this blue square. Let's say this is a manufactured part that I need to assign a raw material to. I can click on this blue square, and now I can do a live search into NAV for any raw material that I want to add. So let's just search by description. Let's see what kind of steel I have here. I'm going to use some wildcard modifiers. All right. So maybe it's made from some steel bars or steel spring, a reset spring. Let's use this reset spring here. This is, once again, this is just my NAV item master, that I'm just to search for. These are all my existing parts. I click on the reset spring, hit accept. CADLink will add that to my bill of materials. Like so. And now when I save, this raw material will push back to my CAD model, so that data will always be available there. And on the NAV side, this will now be a material of my manufactured part because I've assigned it this way. So very handy, very neat feature for those of you who may be, manufacturing a lot of your own parts to have this data across the system. So to summarize, this is the bill of materials grid. Once again, probably the main interface that engineers will use when they're using CADLink to review and analyze the data that's being passed back and forth. There's 3 other tabs here that are less complex and still useful, ease of use tabs. We have BOM changes. This is a summary of what's going to happen to the NAV side of things, the ERP side of the data push. So certain components here will just be created new and inserted to the BOM, whereas other parts, for example, would be removed from the bill of materials. So just a summary that you'll be able to screen capture, save, or send off to someone else for validation purposes. We have a tab for CAD properties. Allows you to drill into the SolidWorks properties that show up on the screen here without having to go back and forth between SolidWorks and CADLink. So just an ease of use tool for engineers to be able to drill through the bill of materials very easily and very quickly. Very lastly, we have these CADLink messages. So you may notice right now, my save button on the top left is grayed out. I'm actually not able to click this button right now and try and save and push the data. And that's because of these CADLink messages here. CADLink messages, these are validations to make sure that the BOM is complete in order for the part to be created or the BOM to be created inside of NAV. So I got 2 messages here telling me that I need to address these things before I try and save. There's a part of my BOM that has an empty description, and for those of you familiar with creating parts in NAV, you have to enter a description to create a part. Same with quantity here. You can't have a 0 quantity on the BOM. So if I go back to the BOM grid, I see here that I have this component, this assembly here with no description. So maybe I'll just put a test description here. And now that this field has a value, when I go back to the CADLink messages, I only have that 1 message left. That's the empty quantity. So when I assign the raw material here, I didn't enter a quantity. So let's say I need, just one of these reset springs. Go back to the CADLink messages. No more CADLink messages. And now if I hover over the save button, we can see that's no longer gray. I'm now able to save and begin the save process. And with that, it will create the parts, all the green rows from here inside of NAV. It will maintain the parent-child relationships. I forgot to mention that not only will it create the parts, it will also insert them to the right bill of materials. It'll fix these yellow fields here, as well as remove these gray parts. So to summarize the features of CADLink, it's a direct integration point-to-point between the CAD, PLM, or PDM system to Dynamics NAV. So there's no in-between step for CSV or Excel files. There's no data entry. It's really just a one-click process of being able to launch CADLink and then saving to push it into NAV. It's point-to-point integration. Updating items and BOMs directly from your CAD, PDM, and PLM system. So whatever data you have in that CAD, that'll be the same data we'll be using to push into the ERP. So no more of that double data entry or triple data entry step. Live item and BOM data comparison. So once again, no more having to eyeball between 2 interfaces to make sure you've captured all the right information in both systems. With CADLink, we bring that to one screen, one interface to show all the differences. It's bidirectional connection, as well as validation and error check to make sure that you have the right data. You're not exceeding character limits. You're not trying to pass null values. We're going to check all that to make sure it's going to be good. So the benefits of using CADLink. First off is reducing engineering costs. When you're able to cut down on the amount of time that engineering needs to spend on that data entry, they'll be able to use that time back for more designing, for more value-added activities, and rather than data entry. And also you'll be able to remove that double and triple data entry step. So all of that saves time, and by saving time, that's it's cost that they can be used elsewhere. Once again, more manufacturing, more engineering. Improving accuracy between engineering to production. So when you have less mistakes in a bill of materials, whether it's on a specification or a quantity, you have to reduce scrap, improve purchasing accuracy, eliminate wrong build situations. And wrong build situations, of course, leads to shop floor confusion, which is even more wasted time for the people actually building these assemblies. So talking about some cost justification or some ROI here. So if by a rule of thumb, an engineer can create an hour of BOM data work every day, especially in the engineered order or the manufacturer order industry, or when you're at large size bill of materials, you can very easily reach an hour of BOM data work every day. By using CADLink, you can reduce that to just simply 2 to 3 minutes. Load up CADLink, analyze and review what's changing, save, and then move on. So essentially, a company of 8 engineers can save 8 hours a day from their team. That's the entire engineering body of the team. If you do the math, the total savings of over $65,000 a year, and payback is much less than 6 months at that evaluation. So some summaries and next steps. So once again, I think we covered this already. We want to reduce redundant tasks. The engineers have already entered the data once. Part numbers and descriptions, all that stuff is in the CAD model. We should just use that data directly and automate the process of recreating the BOM and NAV, rather than having them or someone else to do that by hand. It's an out-of-the-box solution. So it's something that we have prepared and ready, especially for SolidWorks being one of the major CAD systems on the market. And CADLink for NAV is available today. So for some next steps, if you see this presentation and you're interested in knowing more, definitely reach out to your contacts at the Solution Systems. They'd be glad to provide you with more information, or get in touch with us to collaborate on either a further demonstration or a meeting. One of the very common things that we like to do is to do what we call custom demos. Custom demos meaning that we can use your CAD model, your CAD data, your bill of materials data for our demonstration, and so you can see firsthand with with your data how that would look like, the process passing through CADLink and pushing into the ERP. My contact details are there as well as one of my colleagues for backup. And yeah, that's it for the presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to take them now.
Thank you so much, Jeff. We truly appreciate it. Wonderful overview, very informative. I don't see any questions as of yet, but I want to take a quick second just to say thank you to you and to QBuild for doing this webinar for us and our customers, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So I will take over presentation here real quick. Like Jeff said, if you have any questions or whatnot, you can always contact me as well. I will put my contact information up on the screen for you. And if we can't answer your question, we will definitely get QBuild and Jeff involved, and I'm sure that we'll be able to come up with an answer for your question fairly quickly. So once again, thanks, Jeff. We appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks a lot. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.